Hello everyone, welcome back to some more Suzerain, where we are taking a look at trade relations. Let's talk about trade negotiations with Velen and Agnolia. Our primary goal will be to successfully sign at least one trade agreement with one of our smaller neighbors. We have two options with our trade initiative: starting new negotiations with our old partner Agnolia to the northeast and forming a new cooperation with Velen to the west. Tell me about the trade deal with Agnolia. First off, the reason behind this option is more diplomatic than economic, although of course we can't forgo the added economic value. Agnolia is an old ally and valuable trade partner. The point we are at with the early negotiations is around the steel trade. They are demanding that we buy their steel for a higher price. That is because they think that the deal is far too unbalanced as it is. Their second main demand is a privileged access to our agricultural market. If we are to fulfill their demands in return, they are offering a full alliance with Sordland against Romberg. Looking at the current advances of Romberg near our borders, having a coalition against Romberg would prove extremely useful. Obviously, there will be consequences for entering a full alliance. Mainly the issue is heavily land. Volksland has clear intentions on taking over the island one way or another, and entering a military alliance with Agnolia will make them furious. Huh. I want to state my support for the decision to stick to our old ally Agnolia. Even though I disagree with their demand to relax immigration, we have cooperated with them on many issues in the past. There are obviously subjects that we would still need to tackle, like our economies, the trade goals, and what to do with immigration. My opinion that this is a good deal and we should go for it. The new Agnolian Prime Minister is trying to improve the existing relationship. The downside is that we would need to make concessions a reality of any trade deal. I I do kind of want to cozy up to Volksland, though. Um, we can't position ourselves against Volksland. I went I went with Agnolia, and the Helgiport situation fucked me. That is certainly a valid reason. If you decide that Agnolia is a good option, another point is that they have a very democratic system. After the recent elections, the PM has mandated to arrange a fairer deal with us. Martin Van Horten is also an avid supporter of relaxed immigration. Since we said we will keep immigration relaxed, it will help us. Starting the highway construction in England plays a part too. Regardless, if we are going to increase our regional influence to previous levels, we might need to make amends with our neighbors. Ultimately, the decision will be up to you, as always. Tell me about the trade deal with Velen. Dealing with a fractured country like Velen has its positives and negatives. Although it will be lucrative in the short term, there are risks associated with dealing with such a country. They are proposing co-investment projects and a no-tariff agreement. They are also offering oil in return for attracting foreign capital interests from Sordland. However, it is possible that there will be international ramifications of getting closer with a country like Velen. All in all, this is a very lucrative deal for us. However, we need to think about the consequences. I certainly don't support the decision to become friendlier with Velen. We carried their burdens for decades, their migrants flooded our countries, and now they are expecting a deal from us. Maintaining influence with Velen could prove useful. Yes, it is risky, but think about our influence on an underdeveloped region like that. We could also sell more products and enter their market easily. I'm of the opinion that it is simply too risky. Yes, we would gain resources and immediate capital, but I'm afraid of the consequences. You may be right, it is risky. I tend to agree. If we wish to go forward with the deal when the time comes, there is the topic of immigration to consider. Victor Smolak is a known isolationist. Our promise to keep our immigration policy relaxed will not help at all. He blames us for bringing Western interests to the region. He also doesn't want his political opponents to flee here. I personally don't like the idea of getting too close with Velen. Me too. Agreed. I still think we should give it a try. Since we did not promise to align with neither East nor West, it's very likely that their concerns would be more around the deal itself. Our neutrality strategy might ease the tensions with Rumburg, since their primary concern is the strengthening of the superpower blocks. The last handful of monarchies in Merkaba are reactive against the influences of Arcasian capitalism and millennialism. We also need to consider the effects of our economic doctrine plan. The fact that we are headed towards a planned economy will have an influence. Good negotiations optimize the interests, which make the differences become trivial, allowing both sides to reach a deal. Very true, Mr. Vecton. We have a lot of time to prepare before the scheduled visits to Velen and Agnolia. I believe this gives a brief overview of our current options. Our trade delegations will begin work towards the end of the year. We expect final negotiations and the signing of the trade agreements to happen next year. Very much looking forward to visiting Stalport and Vrakovitz with party animals like David and Simon. Ryder laughed. Joseph narrowed his eyes and stared at him. Tell me more about Rizia, the future DLC. The nation south of Lesbia is a centralized constitutional monarchy led by King Romos Taurus, the grandson of Queen Liza Taurus the Great and son of King Valero Taurus the Frail. The kingdom is a developed nation that wielded considerable influence in southern Macopa before the reign of Valero. The country has lost some territory due to internal strife. The Alfonso government signed vital trade agreements with King Romos Taurus, benefiting both nations at a time of need. Attempts at further cooperation stalled out due to the king's blood ties to Rumburg. What exactly are these blood ties? In the 1930s, King Romos married Princess Lena Livingston, the younger daughter of King Alfred Livingston II, the sister of Queen Beatrice Livingston. It was a political marriage that benefited Rizia, helping save it from downfall. The two nations are close, to say the least. The Taurus and the Livingston family should be considered allies for the time being. However, from a practical standpoint, they are too far from each other to provide military support. Both countries are also part of the worldwide network of monarchies known as Grace. The framework is mostly financially and politically motivated due to the pressures of millennialism and democracy. All these kings and queens disagree more than agree, but they are forced to tolerate each other's differences. Imagine if Karanti and the SBC cast the world's remaining monarchs in a soap opera. Better, let's stay on point. Sure. Lucian knocked on the table. We should be more concerned with Peter interjected and reached in his pocket. Actually, a friend of Gus called Rusty gifted me this beautiful piece of full Rizian gold coin. They say it helps you find love. Look. I said stay on point, for fuck's sake, Peter. Peter pulled out an ornamental coin and put it on the table. It was so polished that it caught reflections of light in the room. Lucian was clearly frustrated. Let's move on. As you wish, and thank you. Let's discuss the deal potential and what's on the table. From what we have gathered, there is no clear offer yet. The interest clearly seems to be more control over the gas produced and sold in Sordland. I suspect this must be related to the recent tensions on the coast of Pales. Mr. Manger is working out the details to get more concrete headline terms soon. Of particular interest are the gas fields in Narbel area and the Nargis region. Must be related to Gazom operations. Gus has ties with the people around that corporation, even though there is another CEO, while Alfonso is still chairman. Gazprom is a private corporation, a fact that limits our control over any foreign investments. Darkin Soul's Energy Protection Act of 1933 specifically limits the purchase of Swedish energy company shares by foreign nations to 10%. Ewald Alfonso adjusted this law in 1948 and increased it up to 20%. Anything above that requires us to change the Energy Protection Act. Ewald holds most of Gazprom's cards in his hands still. We're campaigning for him back in the day. Sistrunk is for Soul's regulation. He wouldn't gotten USP leadership without us. He owes us. Good thing we handled the transfer of power within the party diplomatically. I'm sure he will be more than open to talk. So many people in the party approached me and praised our course of action. They thought the USP was fractured enough and didn't need further trenching. I wouldn't be surprised if Alfonso would be willing to concede more due to this fact. I will still be wary of his and Mr. Manger's intentions. Diplomacy is the way 99% of the time. Lucian pulled out a pen and took a few notes. David coughed a bit and then continued talking. From our diplomatic channels, we can tell that Laspia is still very interested in Swedish petrol, whereas Rumburg wants more gas resources. As a sovereign nation, we must protect our resources. Our energy independence is part of our national security. Concern here, Gazprom handles most of our gas productions. Keeping close control. Keeping close control over critical resources is in sync with our planned economy strategy. I'm very glad to have chosen a Sordland-centric class, Mr. President. In theory, centralization works, but it leaves little room for outside help when internal conditions are dire. If Frisia wants to buy more than 20% of shares allowed by the protectionism laws, then the government can step in to make changes to the EPA. Precisely, but we don't know if this will be the case. There is a scenario in which they might invest within the EPA limitations. We just have to hear more before weighing the options. They never revealed much about their involvement to me, but I always had the feeling that Alfonso's crew was more linked to Gazprom than it seemed. I have information that the CEO that replaced Alfonso is a loyalist. Alfonso still is the chairman of Gazprom and the de facto key figure. Additionally, National Business Council Chairman Mikhail Avin and Minister Gus Manger have shares in the company and preside over the board. Affluent swords don't stray far from each other. Why would they? Similar circles, similar educational backgrounds, companies. Half of the oligarchs are from the LBS or Hakart. Any further comments, esteemed cabinet members? The room went silent and no one stepped forward. It was noticeable how much people respected Vichy. He carried the soul of Sordland as a symbol of the past. I think this summarizes all we know and what we stand to gain. Mr. President, what are your thoughts? Cozying up to Rizia might placate Rumburg. So I look favorably towards potential investments for Rizia into Sordland. There is strong potential for further cooperation, and Rizia previously aided Sordland when it needed foreign help the most. I will assist in analyzing the political implications, Mr. Vichy. Thank you. Our support staff and I will be working towards the next step soon after receiving more contacts from Mr. Menger. Our ambassador in Port Trazon is in communication with Laurento Esquivel, the Rizinian Counselor of Foreign Affairs already. Well, that concludes our meeting, Mr. Ray. Thank you all for coming. I will take my leave then. Sir? The meeting concluded and the team dispersed. Our diplomatic action plan officially began. Hopefully, we won't fuck up. Okay, have a diplomatic mission to Valen and Magnolia. Uh, as colossal investment. Sure. The young Swords member claimed links to government. Must find it and squish it. CPS and LUS protests in Estord. Picket line. But I hired a unionized company. Grand National Assembly's Green Build in Sword. Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act. Sordland Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act aims to amplify cultural allure and tourism viability in Borden. Yada yada yada. Section 1 focuses on the cultural elevation of the cities, identifying local food. Section 2 underscores the restoration and preservation of key landmarks. Section 2, subsection 1 further commits to the safeguarding and development of the Caves Ventera in Ribi and the vineyards of Warren. Sure, spend the money that we'll soon not have. Repeal proposal for the Energy Protection Act of 1932. I came a little early for the meeting room before anybody showed up. We had scheduled a meeting to discuss the progress of the Reform Committee regarding the new constitution. I took a seat on the center chair in the vacant meeting room as I waited for them to show up. The reforms were slowly becoming the most significant expectation of my government. We'd be changing Seoul's constitution of 29. Most people nowadays blame the constitution for the outstanding problems of the country. On the other hand, the reformists in the assembly had been getting louder about their demands. What I knew for sure was that I needed to do something about this encroaching chaos before it swallowed me. Meanwhile, Lucian, Peter, and Nia had been leading the committee to prepare the initial draft for the constitutional amendment. I was intrigued to hear their results. There was a knock on the door. It was Lucian. Good afternoon, sir. Lucian arrived exactly on the hour mark again. His punctuality could almost be described as obsessive. Are you waiting behind the door to come at the exact second? I'm sorry, sir. Come on, Lucian, it's a joke. Laugh a little, you scheming, conniving little bastard. You seem to be arriving at the exact second for all the meetings. Punctuality is important for me, sir. I'm just doing my job. Okay. Fine. He took on a seat at the table and took out a bunch of documents, spreading them on the long table. We should begin the meeting as soon as Miss Morna and Mr. Vice President arrive. We finally have some results from the Reform Committee. How does it look? Well, the situation is quite complicated, but I'm sure we will make it work. Just like we accomplished many things before. We'll go over the details regarding the new constitution in the meeting. A few minutes later, Peter and Nia also arrived. After a short chat, everybody sat down and took out their notes. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. There's a lot to talk about the future in this process. Let us begin to tackle the points of contention. Mr. President, our committee meetings were really fruitful, and we already started working on the constitutional draft together with the reformists. They demanded a little too much, but we've had success with Franz Richter to create a realistic draft that could potentially go through the Supreme Court. A little? They demanded to rewrite the whole constitution. Mr. Richter's deputy even suggested removing the term sort from the constitution completely. I also didn't like their theatrics, but the requests were definitely not outrageous. They were just not realistic in today's political circumstances. Nonetheless, Mr. Vice President, thanks for your convincing arguments. We seem to have reached a common ground already. We can fully reach an agreement with the reformists. We will be very strong in the Assembly to propose the change. Can we reach a two-thirds majority? If you can get Franz Richter to work with you on this, our only problem would be uniting our own party. We'll never be able to get the NFP to work with us. We need the majority of our 130 seats, with the Assembly to vote in favor. With the PFJP's full support of 70 votes, we will easily surpass the needed 166. But it will be tough to unite the USP with all the divisive wings that has formed. You must make them follow you loyally. We did it before in the elections, we can do it again. Albin Calvin and his reformist wing should be supporting you. He already weighed in heavily in the committee meetings. However, the Conservatives will be tough to break. The influence of Sol is still living strong in the party. How many votes do they have? The Conservatives have around 40 seats. There are many unaligned people, and some of your loyalists might decide to show their true faces too. So we need as many of the Conservatives to support us, and there is only one person who is key to make them back us. Gloria Torres, she's well respected by the Solists, will be our biggest obstacle in the Assembly, and her demands will be extensive. I also have reason to think she might be in Ursul's pocket. She will be tough to break, but we'll need her to get the Conservative support. Is it possible to pass the Supreme Court? They're the biggest obstacle. Even if we pass the Assembly, the Chief Justice will do his best to block our amendments. We need at least 6 of the 11 judges to vote for the proposal, but Mr. Hawker has enormous influence over the judges. We should reach out to the judges in secret. Some of them might be willing to break rank to support us. All means are to be considered. Neil was taken aback by the statement. According to the Constitution, I am a member of the Supreme Court, which means we already have 1 vote. 2 of the judges are friends of mine, and of similar opinion about the reforms. Consider them with me. Who else would be willing to support reforms? I think Judge Edmonds can be persuaded, and in extension Mr. Dalton and Mr. Martin. They weren't really blinded by the Solist ideology. Yes, those 3 don't seem to be working directly with Chief Justice Hawker. We can get to Isabel Edmonds. We might get the 6 votes needed. That's our best bet. And what are the demands? We should run down each of the main demands of the committee and get your inputs first, Miss Morna. Miss Morna can explain them further. We will start with the first red line. The new constitution will fix the loophole regarding the president's absolute veto powers. Even though Mr. Richter put on a whole show about why vetoes should completely be removed, the committee has almost unanimously agreed on fixing the loopholes, thus limiting presidential vetoes. My suggestion is to add a clause detailing the method the Assembly may override a veto with some sort of supermajority. One person should never be able to block the rest. The loopholes give the president too much power. Or whatever you decide, it's important to get a balanced picture. We will be making history by changing the 29th Constitution of Sol. The second one is about the judiciary. The new constitution will remove the Supreme Court's right to vote on legislation. This is yet another point that was unanimously agreed on by all parties. Tarkan Sol established the rule to protect his 29th constitution. We all know most of the judges are still his pawns. Constitutional amendments will still be very difficult to accomplish with a reform like this, particularly because we will keep the 2/3 vote system to be able to propose a change. However, the judiciary will not have the final say in the amendments. Okay, this is already what we wanted to do. Yes, this will ensure that there won't be another politically motivated Supreme Court. I wouldn't be so sure about that, but okay. Apart from these 2 critical points, they have another major demand. They want to reform the appointment procedures of the ministers. Mr. Richter clarified that the Assembly should have a say in the formation of the Council of Ministers. That is something that a majority in our party also supports. Well, Mr. Richter also talked about abolishing the member of honor rights of Tarkin Sol that gives him absolute immunity and makes him a permanent member of the Assembly. That might be a little harder to do, considering last time. That one is a controversial one. I don't doubt the USP would like that. I doubt the USP would like that. Immunity of the justices, the impeachment of the president, limiting the power of the presidential decrees, all of this came up during the committee meetings. Yes, reformists expect big reforms, while our faction in the USP are not very keen on pushing changes that are too great. I'd say keeping everything in the middle ground is the safest bet. No need to agitate anyone too much. Let's not make a commitment right now. They have valid concerns that we need to look at. I'll keep working with them and keep you updated, Mr. President. Well, regardless of what Mr. Rain decides, we will need to work together to push this agenda. Now you have a better picture of your intentions, sir. I will start reaching out to my contacts to make a draft that works for us. I'll present your inputs to the committee. In a few months, you would have the draft on your desk to make the final changes yourself. I think this was yet another fruitful meeting, sir. Sure. Thanks for the meeting, everyone. Together we will democratize now. Let's just thank everyone for the meeting. Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you, Anton. You have my support, Mr. President. I think this is it. I think this is where we'll call it, sir. Have a good day. They left the room. And that is going to be it for this episode. Construction has started. Fantastic. Incident at Sol's Mansion. Interesting. Nature preservation protest. But yes, that is going to be it for this episode. Thank you all very much for watching. As always, I have been Pope. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.